Hi, I'm Jackson Woods, a product manager in Identity. Welcome to Build 2022 into this on-demand session, where we'll talk about how to build Microsoft 365 and Teams apps that enterprise customers feel confident about adopting. We know that enterprise customers are inclined to limit access to highly privileged applications due to the increased risks of data loss. Modern enterprises often spend a lot of time and expense carefully evaluating the apps that will be installed in their tenants in order to minimize security and compliance risks. And IT admins are well aware of the potential for apps to be compromised and exploited, leading to significant business impact. Such incidents can be especially painful when a threat actor is able to exploit an app with too many privileges, widening the blast radius of the attack. As a developer, you play a key role in protecting your customers' data. Today, we're going to talk about some ways that you can help protect your customers, whether they're part of your own organization or any other, and ease adoption by creating more trustworthy apps. So at Microsoft, we've heard from developers that there are three main challenges you face today when it comes to app trust. The first is giving your app access only to what it needs. The second is giving IT admins confidence when adopting your app. And the third challenge is meeting your organizational compliance requirements and applicable industry standard compliance requirements. We've made investments to help you address each of these challenges. For our first area, we'll focus on ensuring that your application requests the fewest permissions possible, a key pillar of zero trust security. I'm going to show you how to protect the data within your application by restricting your app's access only to approved resources in Teams. Just over a year ago, we launched Resource-Specific Consent for Teams, and since then we've continued to build on this key new Teams feature. Using RSC to achieve least privilege within your app improves your app security posture, reduces the impact of data leaks, and makes it easier for organizational admins to approve and adopt your app. We already have a rich set of RSC permissions for you to use, with more on the way. So now, let's take a quick look at how this works in practice and how the RSC experience compares to traditional permissions and consent for Azure AD. So in this demo, we're going to see how to identify our resource-specific permissions, how to configure your app to use resource-specific consent for Teams, and what the installation experience looks like for users. In this example, we're building an app that will provide simple chat analytics. The app reads messages and chat channels, processes the data alongside other organizational data available in Microsoft Graph, and installs a custom tab where it can surface useful information about the relevant employees or customers involved in the chat. For instance, an employee could be identified as an expert on a certain topic that they frequently engage in, or a customer need could be flagged for follow-up. To do this, the app uses the Microsoft Graph APIs for Teams to access relevant resources, in this case, reading the members and messages and channels, and managing the app's tab. In the past, this would have meant we needed to request various app-only permissions like channelmessage.read.all or teammember.read.all. But these permissions allow the app to read every message or member in every channel. Is that really the scope of access that we need here? And remember, those permissions will show up when admins are asked to consent. Such broad permissions are often pretty scary for enterprises and make adoption much more difficult. Instead, let's configure this app to use resource-specific consent. By using RSC, individual team owners will be able to consent to the app just for the scope of their team, so the app only has access to the teams that it should. Configuring a Teams app to use RSC is straightforward. The first step is to figure out which permissions you'll need for your API calls. RSC permissions are called out in their own tables in our Microsoft Graph documentation, and you'll also be able to identify them because they end with a resource they're scoped to, like .group or .chat. A quick web search for graph permissions will find the complete reference list. And individual API documentation pages, like this page describing how to get Teams channel messages, show both the normal permissions and RSC permissions available for that operation. In this case, the right RSC permissions are channelmessage.read.group, channelsettings.read.group, teammember.read.group, and teamstab.readwrite.group. To use them, we just need to open our manifest.json file and add them. RSC permissions are recorded inside the authorization object by defining a resource-specific collection, like this. The particulars of recording the permissions differ a little by manifest version. Here the manifest scheme is 1.12, but older versions also support adding RSC permissions inside the web application info object. You can check out the supported manifest schemas in the Teams developer docs. Note that I can just continue to pass the .default scope parameter when requesting a token, but that with RSC, the specific permissions will be shown and consent will be granted at the time that the app is installed for a specific team. This is different from standard consent in Azure AD, which usually happens upon user sign-in or when an admin takes action. Next, I need to be sure to remove those older tenant-wide permissions from the matching app registration in the Azure portal. Otherwise, admins could be asked to consent to those permissions, even though I've reconfigured my app to use RSC. And of course, admins may still need to grant regular admin consent for any standard application permissions your app requires, if it has to support non-RSC scenarios. So now that we've added the right RSC permissions, they'll show up in Teams when an admin adds the app in their tenant. And if RSC is enabled in the customer tenant, then any team owner can now grant the app access to the right resources. Resource-specific consent is a key new feature that you should plan to take advantage of in your Teams apps. In addition to support for team-specific consent, we've recently added support for group chat-specific consent on the Microsoft Graph beta endpoint. These capabilities complement our existing features for allowing admins to manage access to specific SharePoint sites and Exchange mailboxes and calendars. We'll continue to expand the set of resources and scenarios supported for resource-specific consent in the future. Together, all of these features mean that we're making it easier than ever to limit your app's access only to the data it really needs. Now, apps should always try to be least privileged, and RSC helps you get there. But what does this mean in practical terms for you as a developer? Why does least privilege and RSC help give IT admins the confidence to adopt your apps? Well, there are a couple of ways that your work to achieve least privilege improves your customer's experience. First, keeping your app's privileges to a minimum, whether through RSC or not, reduces the friction of app adoption. Second, RSC is deeply connected to the broader work Microsoft is doing to help customers keep their tenants secure using consent policies and settings. To understand these points, let's take a moment to look more closely at the consent experience and at how consent is governed in Azure AD. So if you're an experienced Azure AD developer, you might have noticed something that didn't happen in the previous demo. That's right, we never had to ask an admin for consent. You're probably familiar with the evaluation and approval processes required when consent by a global admin comes into play. But by using RSC, we've expanded the pool of approvers for this app to all group owners in all tenants where RSC is enabled, which means we've potentially reduced user friction for a lot of customers. The person who actually needs to use the app is able to take action right in the moment. And that leads me to another way that least privileged apps and RSC can reduce friction. As a developer, you're already aware that the admins managing your customers' tenants can restrict their users' ability to consent to apps. You can see this in the Azure portal on the User Consent Settings page. The first setting lets admins restrict user consent for standard permissions, disabling it entirely, or as Microsoft recommends, allowing users to consent only to low-risk permissions from verified publishers. But you might not have known that resource-specific consent is governed separately from the standard consent policy, here in the second setting on this page. And that means that your customers can keep RSC user consentable, even in tenants where standard consent is completely turned off. By creating an app that takes advantage of RSC, you help enable your customers to control consent in the ways that make sense for them and increase the ease of adopting your app. Consent permissions governance is a big area of investment for us, and there are some great new features coming the next year. First, we'll be bringing the same types of rich policies that are supported for standard consent to resource-specific consent. These policies can consider your app's publisher verification status, Microsoft 365 certification status, individual permission risk classifications, and more. And not only that, but will support organizational consent policies that take into account the sensitivity of the team in which the app is being granted consent. Second, I'm pleased to share that later this year, we'll enable pre-approval for individual apps that use resource-specific consent. This means that any apps you build to take advantage of RSC now will be even better positioned for easy adoption. Organizations will be able to acquire apps, pre-approve them for use, and then allow their users to independently consent to those apps' resource-specific permission requests as needed. We expect that this capability will further ease the adoption of apps that rely on RSC. And last, we will continue to push for more secure default settings in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. In the past, most tenants either had user consent fully enabled or fully disabled. You can expect moving forward that the consent policy defaults for new customers will focus on selectively enabling common trusted scenarios, and that they'll take into account richer signals about your app. That means the specific security posture of your app will matter a lot. Making use of best practices like RSC, publisher verification, and M365 certification will help ease adoption of your apps. So we've just covered a number of ways that we're smoothing app adoption in Microsoft 365. But remember, your organization or customers will only be able to make use of these new capabilities if your app supports resource-specific consent. All right, now that we've seen how to build a less privileged app and learn about why these apps are easier for admins to adopt and manage, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Krishna to talk about our third big developer challenge, compliance.
Hi, I am Krishna Mawani and I work on the Microsoft 365 App Compliance Program. Combined with the need to restrict access to just what's needed, customers also need to continually adapt to an ever changing regulatory landscape. How can you grow trust with enterprise customers when it comes to adopting your cool application? That's where our next area of investment comes in to help reduce the security and compliance risk by getting your app certified by Microsoft. With the Microsoft 365 App Compliance Program, you can easily demonstrate that you have met stringent security, privacy, and data handling practices based on industry standards and regulatory frameworks such as SOC 2, PCI DSS, or ISO 27001. Now let's hear from Mural, an ISV building innovative collaboration apps that integrate with teams about their Microsoft 365 certification experience.
Hi, my name is Richard Bornstein. I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships here at Mural. Mural is a collaborative intelligence company powered by Azure and integrated with Microsoft 365. We connect teams to unlock their potential, increasing the innovation capacity of the enterprise. We are thrilled that the Mural app for Microsoft Teams, Outlook, and Office recently achieved Microsoft 365 certification and became the first application in the visual collaboration category to do so. We partnered closely with Microsoft on our certification journey, and we're already seeing the customer value. Microsoft 365 certification is designed to show customers that an application has strong security and compliance practices in place to protect customer data. It's a seal of approval from the market leader for collaboration software, ensuring teams can trust that their data is safe with us. As threats and stakes have increased around cybersecurity, this certification reaffirms Mural's commitment to meeting and exceeding customer expectations with enterprise-grade security and compliance. We've already heard from IT teams at large Fortune 500 customers in the financial services, professional services, and technology industries how this certification gives them the trust and confidence they require, and how it has saved them time and money on their own compliance reviews. We're excited to continue being at the forefront of innovation within the Microsoft Cloud, from Azure to Teams and beyond.
Getting certified is easier than ever and can be completed solely within Partner Center. If you have an app published through Partner Center, you can get your app certified. Within the Partner Center homepage, you can navigate to the Marketplace offers, select the app which you are looking to get certified, select App Compliance, and fill out each section of the attestation questionnaire, which is indicated by a green checkmark when complete. Click Submit and wait for the submission to be approved by the App Compliance team. Once approved, you can begin the certification process. The first step is to complete the initial document submission. This will help Microsoft scope your security assessment. Once complete, click Submit and wait for approval. Once approved, a set of controls will be displayed. You will need to submit evidence for each control, demonstrating that you have met the requirements. Once you have completed uploading the evidence documents, click Submit. Our team will then review the assessment, and once approved, you will be awarded Microsoft 365 certification. Apps awarded a certification will receive a badge and have their certified status reflected in Team Store, App Source, various other surfaces, and Admin Portal. This trust signal gives more visibility to your customers about the security and compliance posture so they can take better informed decisions during their adoption journeys. As for IT admins, they can now take less time vetting your application as artifacts and reports of the certification are made available on our public-facing documentation website. You can refer your customers to these pages to reduce the sale and adoption cycle time for your application. For AAD apps, users can see the status of the app certification in the App Consent UX, where they can make consent decisions and set consent policies through APIs in Microsoft Graph Beta. To learn more about the full benefits of certification, visit aka.ms/getcertified. We understand that you want to focus more of your time and resources on providing innovative solutions and powerful applications. In addition to covering the cost of certification, we are pleased to announce a new developer tool to help you simplify and accelerate the process of evidence collection and control validation. I would now like to welcome my colleague Shrikant to speak more about this tool. Thank you.
Thanks, Krishna. Hi, everyone. I'm Shrikant Tirthala, a Principal Program Manager in Azure Developer Experience team. As Krishna said today, developers and compliance teams have to gather the required evidence and follow a manual and time-consuming process to get SOC 2, ISO, and Microsoft 365 certified. In addition, countless hours are spent on responding to individual compliance questionnaires. This delays the enterprise adoption of an application. Microsoft is now bringing to you the App Compliance Automation tool for Microsoft 365 that enables a developer to validate that their application meets the Microsoft 365 certification standard and simplifies the process of evidence collection and control validation. This tool enables you to accelerate your application's adoption in the enterprise and to achieve the industry-specific compliance certifications. I'll walk you through a quick demo of this tool. The App Compliance Automation tool can be initiated by logging into your Azure AD account. Once you have logged in, create a new compliance boundary and identify the specific resources corresponding to your application. These resources will be monitored against a standard set of application, operational, and data security controls. To create a new compliance report for your application, navigate to the Reports tab, provide a report name. Then select the appropriate resources corresponding to your application. You can select resources by subscription, resource group, or using resource tags. After selecting the appropriate resources, add all of them and click on Create Report. This will create a new compliance report. Once the report has been created, you will be navigated to the Reports tab, where you can see the list of all compliance reports. Click on the specific report name, and you can see the corresponding controls which have passed and failed. To fix the controls which have failed, navigate to the appropriate control, click on the control name, and click on the actions to see the remediation steps. If you have multiple reports, you can navigate to the Overview tab and see the status of all the reports and the corresponding certification status. What we just saw in the tool is a simple way to see whether your application meets the compliance standards and an easy way to remediate the issues. You can export the compliance control information and share it with your auditor or your customers. In addition to achieving the regulatory industry compliance standards, the App Compliance Automation tool for Microsoft 365 will make it easier for your application to get Microsoft 365 certified. The App Compliance Automation tool has been integrated with the Microsoft 365 certification workflow to enable you to access your application's compliance report and submit it as an evidence to get Microsoft 365 certified. I will show you a quick demo of how the App Compliance Automation tool is being integrated with the Microsoft 365 certification workflow that Krishna demoed a few minutes ago. Navigate to the Partner Center portal and start the Microsoft 365 certification process. Indicate that you would like to use the compliance report from the App Compliance Automation tool for Microsoft 365. Provide the specific report name. You can also select a specific snapshot of a report, which is a time and point version of the compliance report. You can continue answering the rest of the required questions and upload any required documents. For example, the system architecture document for your application. Once you're done, click on Submit. Your compliance control data is now sent to the Microsoft 365 certification team for review. The review team will approve the compliance control data and identify additional information needed from you. You can now upload other relevant information, for example, a policy document on patching, and submit it for a final review. The Microsoft 365 certification analyst will review the submission, approve it, and award you the Microsoft 365 certification badge. As you saw here, the App Compliance Automation tool for Microsoft 365 has drastically reduced the time it takes to gather the required evidence and validate the controls needed for getting Microsoft 365 certified. The App Compliance Automation tool for Microsoft 365 is now available in preview for applications built on Azure. You can sign up for the preview program at aka.ms/acat. To summarize, we talked about three main challenges and Microsoft's investments to help you address them. Number one, giving your app the right level of access. For this, we saw a demo of resource-specific consent that helps you set up a least privileged app. Number two, giving IT admins confidence when adopting your application. For this, we have helped you reduce friction in governing applications with rich consent policies. Number three, meeting your organizational compliance requirements and achieving industry-specific compliance certifications. We've seen a demo of achieving the Microsoft 365 certification through the App Compliance Automation tool for Microsoft 365. This accelerates your compliance journey and enables faster adoption of your applications across the enterprise. We hope that you're excited to take advantage of these new offerings in your application development journey.